Hi everyone, welcome back to Just the iLogs. Over the weekend, I shared a video with you about my Thanksgiving menu and my grocery shopping at Costco, Trader Joe's, and ShopRite. And today, on a Monday morning, I decided I finally have time and I'm going to cook all those recipes before I head to work. So I do have a game plan because time is of the essence today and I want to be able to cook everything before the end of the day. Most of the menu is from online recipes and I'm gonna go over them. So Thanksgiving menu number 1, I have the creamy pumpkin soup with coconut milk from wholesomeyum.com. I have number 2, the spinach and pesto stuffed butternut squash from Half Baked Harvest book. And this book right here to my left, this is the book that I got from my trip from Home Goods. And I just love all the recipes. I'll be cooking a lot more recipes from this book. And then number 3, I have pumpkin lasagna roll-ups from thepioneerwoman.com. Number 4, we have the cider braised pot roast with caramelized onions and cauliflower rice from howsweetseats.com. Now, I'm not making the cauliflower rice. I don't think my family will eat it. And so I'm going to opt out of making the cauliflower rice. And then number 5 is the mini plum and peach galettes from lifeofsimpletreats.com. Now, I already used up all my peaches and actually used canned peaches, so I'll be using my plums for this recipe. And then we have number 6, holiday cider, which is from dinnerthandessert.com. And then in place of the dough for the galettes, I am going to be using a recipe from Minimalist Baker, which is also an online recipe. I printed out all the recipes, so I have them here on my book holder. And I did try to staple them, but my stapler is actually broken, so I'm just gonna have to shuffle through my papers. And then my Half Baked Harvest book is over here. Now, I already printed out the recipe, but if I wanted to look at the recipe a little bit better, because I think my print is not so great, I have the book next to me. I have a list here. I call it Order of Operation, and this is the way I'm going to cook all this, hopefully, before I go to work tonight. So number 1, I'm gonna make the dough for the galettes and then freeze it. And then 2, I'm gonna start searing off the beef. I'm gonna follow the directions, but instead of using a cast iron pan, I'm gonna use a crock pot instead. Then I'm gonna heat the oven and prepare the squash and make it. And then I'm gonna start preparing the holiday apple cider in the crock pot as well. I'm gonna end up having 3 crock pots altogether for this Thanksgiving menu. And then I'm gonna start boiling the water for the lasagna roll-ups. And then I'm gonna finish that dish. And then we're gonna make the pumpkin soup in the crock pot again. And then we're gonna finish off the galettes and bake it. So that is my order of operation today. I do have some time, but I don't know if I'm gonna have enough time. So it's already almost 1 o'clock in the afternoon and I pick up my kids later on and then I go to work in the evening. So let's see if I can follow this order of operation, if this is going to help me finish my Thanksgiving meal for today. To prevent getting my game plan and my Thanksgiving menu list dirty, I just put them here on my refrigerator, so whenever I need to refer to it, I can. And so I can kind of follow along on my order of operation and then just make sure that I have completed everything that I have on my Thanksgiving menu. For the mini galette dough, we're going to use 2 cups of flour, half a teaspoon of sea salt, but I'm using fine table salt, so that's going to be less, so that's just going to be a 1/4 teaspoon. We're also going to be using 12 tablespoons of unsalted butter and then about 4 to 6 tablespoons of ice cold water. Now, I'm not using my peaches this time. I'm going to be using fresh plums. So this is going to be interesting how it comes out because I did try to cook this twice with the peaches and not the plums. I want to show you how I set up my stuff that I need for the galettes. So I have my butter, I have the food processor, I have the cold ice water, I have my fruits and lemon. And just looking over my sink, I do have my meat for my braised pork that's ready defrosted. And then I have some bowls and some flour and I think a few utensils here for the rest of the galettes. We're gonna start off with 12 tablespoons of unsalted butter. And you do need to have this ice cold. So you cut it up in cubes and then you put it into the freezer for a few minutes until it gets very cold. I've also done this frozen with frozen butter. It was a little bit harder to mix in the flour, but it still worked out. So I'm just gonna cut this in cubes. So you cut it in half and then you cut it into quarters. And then you're gonna cut it into about, in the recipe it said about 1 inch. So I'm gonna do a little bit smaller than that. And I think that's about it. And then we're gonna put this into the bowl and separate this so it separates individually and then put it into the freezer. From the lifeofsimpletreats.com recipe, it did say to use 3 cups of cherries. I did see on another recipe to use 3 cups of blueberries if you had blueberries. Using the peaches, I did find it to be very, how can I say, very liquidy when I made the filling. But I just love the taste of the lemon and the peaches. But the peaches tasted so good. I just don't have time to go to the store again to buy some more peaches. And they do cost money. They were $2 a can. So I'm just going to use what I have. I bought these peaches from Costco about, I want to say it's been a week and a half. So we're going to finish this up before they go bad. Baking can be challenging because there are so many variations that can make or break a recipe. I would recommend to bake a recipe several times before serving so you know what works for you and the equipment that you have. The first batch didn't bake well since my oven is not regulating the temperature well, though this recipe is worth the effort to make until perfect. Later on, you'll see me remake this recipe. Before I start making a big mess, I did put this apron on, and this was made by my sister-in-law about 1.5 years ago. I started to bake and seriously bake. And it's funny because at that time I was on a keto diet and I wasn't really eating what I was making, but I was just tasting it and then spitting it out. I was really strict with my diet, but I love to bake. So she made this for me and it says baked with love. And eventually I did stop baking and I kind of lost my passion for it because baking is a science and I was finding it difficult in some recipes and it was very time consuming. So I kind of stopped, and hopefully this season I do get to bake a little bit more, maybe not as intensive as before, but I do want to bake some new recipes and new goodies. I had a friend over yesterday who is a professional baker, and he says instead of zesting the lemon this way, you're gonna just take the mandolin and you're gonna go this way. So I can see what I'm doing and I don't have to keep turning and looking to see where I'm zesting. We still need to add 1 tablespoon of sugar and 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. The recipe called for 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, but I think I'll just use 1. So I don't want to put the sugar in yet. I don't want the juices coming out of the plums. So I'm just going to put this in the refrigerator while we make the galette dough. To the food processor, you're going to add 2 cups of flour. I already have 1 in there right now. This is how I measure the flour right now. I am going to be investing into a weight, so I don't need to do this anymore. But you just kind of scoop it into the measuring cup and then slide it off with a flat surface. And then you're going to just put the cup of flour into our food processor. Next, we're going to add the butter. We're going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of salt and a tablespoon of sugar. And you want to pulse this until the butter gets into little small bits. Some people have described it as the size of a pea. So what you want to do is pulse the butter just a few times just so it's cut up a little bit. And then we're going to add a little bit of ice cold water just so everything can combine. But you're going to see it really crumbly at first, and then by hand we're going to put it together. All right guys, so I have another food processor. Thankfully my mom had one and she let me use it, but for some reason mine is not working. I've tried everything and it's not pulsing. So anyway, so I have all the ingredients that we mentioned in here and we're just gonna pulse this. All right, so I'm gonna start adding some water, and the recipe says 4 to 6 tablespoons of water. Just 1. Sorry guys, for some reason it wasn't filming, but I wanted to show you the little pieces of butter that's in the flour right now. I did add about 5 tablespoons of water, and when I squeeze the dough, it does kind of come together. So I'm gonna stop adding the water and transfer this into a bowl. Make sure to add just enough water so the dough gets together. If it's too dry like this one, it will become crumbly and hard to mix. Also, if you feel like the dough is getting too warm, you can also place it in the freezer for a few minutes and then continue on kneading the dough. If you enjoy watching this video, please like and subscribe. Here's a close-up of the dough. You can see there's chunks of butter throughout the dough. And so as this bakes, the butter is gonna puff up the pastry and it's gonna be light and flaky. Now back to our order of operations. We made the dough and we have it in the freezer. We're gonna sear the beef and we're gonna follow the directions. We are going to use the crock pot instead. So that's gonna save us a lot of time. We don't have to kind of watch it. And then we still have a whole lot left for our Thanksgiving menu. And hopefully this is gonna be a lot faster. I know baking does take time, but you do get a very delicious product out of it. Now we're gonna refer back to our menu. And so the mini galettes are done for now. And then we're gonna work on our cider braised pot roast with caramelized onions. So we need the 3-pound chuck roast. We need to salt and pepper that. And we also have to put some flour. We also need to cut up some onions. This one says 3 sweet onions, so that's what we're gonna do. So as we salt and pepper and let that marinate in the meat for a little bit, we're gonna cut up the onions. For the butternut squash, we need it peeled and cut. We need about 2 cups. So to save time on this, if you don't want to peel and cut it, then you can just buy pre-cut butternut squash. But I already have the butternut squash from Trader Joe's, so I'm gonna have to do the labor's job and peel and cut it. Now, if you guys watched my Thanksgiving video where I went grocery shopping for the Thanksgiving menu, you'll know I got this from Costco. So there's 2 huge pieces of meat that comes in the package, and it's about, I think, $5.99 a pound. The whole thing cost me $40, so it is a lot, but it also comes with a lot of meat. You can see how thick it is. So I did salt and pepper it, and we're gonna set aside while we cut our butternut squash. For this recipe, you need 2 cups of butternut squash. I found that 1 large butternut squash is enough for this recipe. I did sharpen my knife a little bit so it can cut better. Look at that, guys. It's so gorgeous. I just love the color of fall. And this reminds me of fall. All right, so I'm just gonna cut this in half. So hard. I like this size right here. These might be a little bit big, but I kind of like the way it is because the squash is going to get very soft. Next, the recipe calls for 3 large onions, but I'm going to use 4. And it also calls for 3 cloves, but I'm going to use 5. So let's get this done. All right, so I have all the onions pretty thinly sliced. And you can see I kind of cut it lengthwise so you can see the grooves on the side. We are going to caramelize this, so you want a nice long piece of onion. And then I did mince all the garlic cloves. All right, so I went back to the recipe just in case I forgot a step, and I almost forgot to sprinkle the flour all over the beef and rub it before searing the beef. So I'm glad I went back to it. And then I also checked my order of operation just to make sure I'm on track. And so far I am, and I just have to complete this dish. And we're just gonna put everything into the crock pot. It's quite messy, but here is the flour on the beef. I'm just trying to get it on all sides of the beef before searing it. I love this pan because it has a wide base and it's stainless steel. I do want to purchase a good cast iron sometime like in the future. But for now, this is going to be sufficient for what we're doing today. There's like this little tiny piece of meat here that I think I'm going to cut off because it's not going to get brown on the other side. So let's flip this over. That looks really good considering this is not a cast iron. The recipe does say sear it just for 2 minutes on each side. That came out really good. Okay, we're gonna add the onions. And together with the garlic, add salt and pepper and saute for 5 minutes. While the onions are cooking, we're gonna go ahead and start with the next recipe. We're gonna start with the spinach and pesto stuffed butternut squash. We're gonna go ahead and preheat the oven at 425. And then we're gonna take our squash and we're gonna prick it with a fork all throughout the squash. We're gonna go ahead and microwave this for 2 to 3 minutes. But this is a good size squash, so I'm gonna do this one at a time. And it says for 2 to 3 minutes. We need to get a ½ cup of cider and cook it into the onions and let it cook for another 15 to 20 minutes. So I'm glad I started on that squash because this is really gonna take a little while. Once I cut the squash and bake it, we're gonna go ahead and start with the holiday apple cider, and that's gonna be in the crock pot. Knowing that I had to make this big Thanksgiving menu, I did buy 3 new crock pots and they were all on sale. So I bought 2 little like smaller ones, 4.5 quarts, and the 8-quart one, I did get that in Kohl's and it was on sale. So I got it for like $50 something. You do have to apply for a credit card, but you can pretty much pay for it right away. So I saved about $25 on it. So while that's going, I'm getting all the ingredients for the butternut squash. So I need heavy cream, pesto, dried sage, thyme, spinach. I have the 4 cloves that I'm about to chop, ricotta cheese, so good thing I have extra. And then I need crushed red pepper, salt, fontina cheese, which I got the fontanelle cheese. And then it says fresh thyme and sea salt, and I think that's pretty much it. I'm just gonna pop this into the microwave for about 1.5 minutes, and then after that, squeeze the excess water. All right, so our onions are cooked. Now, if this was a Dutch oven, then I would just put the beef on top and then the squash and put it back into the oven. Since I don't have a Dutch oven, we have a crock pot instead, so I don't have to like think about it because it is gonna cook for like another 3 hours. So I'm just gonna put this or transfer this into the crock pot and then just assemble as per directions. Okay, let's turn it on. We're gonna do low and we'll set it for, I'll do 3 hours at first. All right, so going back to my order of operation, the beef is officially into the crock pot. The squash is not cut yet, but I'm gonna do that now. And then we have to make the lasagna. Okay, I think I'm gonna get that started soon. I'm gonna have to bring this up there and get the pasta started. Feels like I'm on a cooking show because I really have 1 hour left before I go to work. So anyway, I'm gonna cut up the squash real quick. I also have to gather the ingredients. I'm also supposed to put this, the rest of the ingredients together and then place the squash in the baking dish. So I gotta hurry up. If you decided to buy pre-cut squash, then you can skip this whole step. If not, make sure your knife is sharpened before you cut and make sure you have a steady base. I found it easier to cut it on both sides than meet in the middle instead of cutting down straight on one side of the squash. My spinach is unfortunately still frozen. I'm gonna put this back for another 1.5 minutes. And before the day started, I wanted to get all the spices and ingredients that I needed and just lay it on the table. But I was pretty busy this morning with bringing my kids to school and my other daughter who's in college, and we went to the grocery store with my mom because she needs to go there. So I didn't have the extra time to gather the ingredients. So now I'm kind of like wasting time just gathering their ingredients. So I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to finish this today. So if I don't finish everything today, like doing the galettes and doing the hot apple cider, then that's definitely gonna be tomorrow. And I'm trying to even finish the roll-ups or the lasagna roll-ups today. So anyway, the water's boiling. I'm gonna add the pasta into the hot water and then get that going. I also added a little bit of salt and some garlic powder just to give the lasagna some flavor. I recommend buying a honey nut squash if you can find it. It is a shorter squash with a larger reservoir. Also, during the recipe, I made a couple of errors, like forgetting to add the defrosted spinach in the microwave, adding triple amount of the pesto, and adding all the cheese at once. Though the filling was very delicious by adding the extra pesto, I would still recommend adding the same amount. For the original recipe, you'll need 2 small butternut or honey nut squash, 3 cup quarter of heavy cream, 1/4 cup basil pesto, 1 teaspoon of dried sage, 1 teaspoon dried thyme, 8 ounce frozen chopped spinach, thawed and squeezed dried, 4 garlic cloves finely chopped or grated, 1/4 cup whole milk ricotta cheese, 1/4 teaspoon to half a teaspoon of crushed red pepper flakes, though I added lesser amounts, Himalayan salt and fresh ground black pepper, 1 cup of shredded fontina cheese, fresh thyme, and flaky sea salt for serving. Also, only add 1/4 cup of the shredded cheese to the filling and save the rest for the topping. If you enjoy watching this video, please like and subscribe. Alright, so I'm going to come to the conclusion that I'm not going to finish this today. I'm going to have to continue it tomorrow. But I just boiled the pasta. So I'm going to see what is the stuffing for the roll-ups. And I'm going to try to finish that hopefully by today. I don't have to bake it today. I just want to get it rolled up and then covered. But anyway, this fontina cheese is so good. It tastes like Gruyere cheese. It's like nutty and crumbly. What do I have done already? The butternut squash is not yet in the oven yet. I actually have to shut it off, but I'm gonna just mix all those ingredients together, bake that, try to make the roll-ups, and then I'm gonna call it a day. There's one big thing I forgot for this butternut squash. I still have the frozen spinach in their microwave. What I'm gonna do right now at this point, because it's almost 6, I'm gonna just put that into the refrigerator and then cook it separately, and I'm just gonna put it on top of the butternut squash when it's done. I'm not gonna reopen the oven and put it on top. I think that's just a waste of time. But I can also just mix it into that remaining stuffing. I can do that too. I do have another butternut squash. So that was a fail, kind of. I mean, I'm sure it's gonna taste good because that has a nice cheese and pesto all mixed in with the herbs. But I have this whole container of pasta that's already cooked. And I'm gonna have to put a little water in it and save it for tomorrow. After 30 minutes of cooking, this is how the butternut squash came out. Make sure you don't overfill it like we did, and don't forget to add the spinach and top it off with the rest of the fontina cheese. I did pop this back into the oven for another 10 minutes since the squash was not totally soft in the middle. Hey guys, so it's been about 24 hours since I last left you. And I had kind of like a high hopes of cooking all my Thanksgiving food on my menu plan. I know that's not gonna happen anymore, and I fully accepted it. So now what my plan is to just try to cook another like dish tomorrow, because I am working tonight. Get the lasagna roll-ups and then not like fully bake it, so I don't have to cook everything twice. Because I realized that I really don't have enough time to cook all these dishes twice, which was my original plan. Basically make a video, show you guys, and then on the actual day of when we need to bring our food, then I kind of know what to do and cook it faster and then bring the food there. It's already about 5:15 now, and so I also have work tonight. And what I'm planning to do is try to make those galettes, at least a few of them. I'm gonna use peaches this time and not the plums that I have in my refrigerator. I'm gonna just save that for the actual party. But what I want to do is bring some of the galettes to my job so they can have some before they leave, the day shift leaves. But I want to show you what I was able to accomplish yesterday and what changes I made yesterday as well. Here's what I was able to accomplish yesterday. I have the butternut squash, but I got to tell you a little story about this. So when I took this out of the oven, the whole tray kind of fell into the door jamb and all the fillings came out. And another big mistake is that I actually forgot to add the spinach. So I had some leftover spinach and I just stuffed them back into these butternut squash. So what I'm gonna do, so I don't have to bake everything twice, I'm gonna cover this up, put it in the refrigerator. I guess when it's time to reheat these, I'm gonna sprinkle the cheese and then place them back in the oven. The other squash, I kind of like ate half of it just to see how it tastes like, and I really, really like it. The combination of pesto, the garlic, the spinach, everything combined, and the fontina cheese really makes this dish stand out. I'm gonna save this dish for Thursday, and hopefully, like it's not gonna spoil. But anyway, I'm gonna put this in the refrigerator and hopefully it'll still be good by then. The spinach I did squeeze out like the directions said. So it's frozen spinach, you defrost it, thaw it out, and then you squeeze the water out of it, and then you mix it in with the cheese mixture. For the braised pot roast, I did cook it for about 3.5 hours, and then in the evening when it was done, my family just shut it off. And so when I came home this morning, it was like slightly warm, and the potatoes were a little bit more like vibrant. But then in the evening, I decided to heat it up for dinner, and then I cooked it on high for about an hour. Now, we're not gonna be able to eat this today, unfortunately, because we actually have food. My mom cooked for us. So hopefully I can cool this down and put it into the refrigerator and we'll eat it tomorrow. But I would suggest that to add the squash halfway into the cooking process like I had originally planned, or you can just take the squash and bake it in the oven instead. But the meat is really, really tender. There was more juices that came out of it. And also, right before I went to work, I added another about half a cup to 3/4 cups of apple cider because I was worried about the bottom like burning, and no one's really here to like keep an eye on this. So I just decided to add more juice. So that's why there's a lot more liquid than expected. I can smell the caramelized onion in here. It could be a little bit more tender if I were to cook it longer. That will be our dinner for tomorrow. And then I do have another slab of meat that I can cook on the day of Thanksgiving. With the limited time that I have before work, I'm gonna make a few galettes. So the original recipe called for fresh peaches, plums, blueberries, or I'm not sure if it was cherries. But I don't have any of those except for the plums, which I already have in the refrigerator, and that's gonna be cooked for Thanksgiving Day. So what I did last time, or the very first time, is I used canned peaches, and actually they turned out really, really good. So this time I did rinse them off just slightly and then just dry them with a paper towel, because when you add the sugar and the cornstarch, there's like some liquid that comes out of the peaches. So you don't want that into your dough. So anyway, it's gonna be 1 to 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. I know the recipe called for 2, I ended up using 1 last time, and then a tablespoon of sugar, and then just 1 lemon zest. So I'm gonna do that real quick. We're gonna mix this up and just get that thoroughly, evenly mixed. All right, so now for the dough. You wanna keep this butter in here. You don't wanna overmix the dough. So also you wanna chill after making it. I don't know if I have time to chill it. I'm gonna see if I can at least chill it for a few minutes in the freezer. But instead of rolling out the dough to 12 inches like the recipe calls for, and then cutting it to about 6 to 10 pieces, I'm just gonna divide this into about maybe 8 pieces and then just roughly roll out like a circle dough. And that way I don't waste any of it. This was in my refrigerator when I pulled it out. You can keep it in the freezer, and I would recommend you keep it in the freezer because the colder it is, the more puff to the pastry you'll get. The recipe to this dough will be added to another clip towards the end of the video. Also, making a perfect pastry takes practice since there's so many variances that can change the results. So don't give up on baking, especially if there's a recipe that you really enjoy. All right, so here are my mini galettes. I did sprinkle a little sugar on it. I did squeeze it in together a little bit to keep it in place. I didn't put it in the freezer, so I'm gonna see if it's gonna come out okay. And then I did add some parchment paper because it tends to burn on the bottom. My oven is kind of irregular right now, so I need to work on that. But anyway, this is what I'm just doing quickly just to get this cooked. And it doesn't have to be so pretty because these little mini galettes or open-faced pies are meant to be imperfect but delicious. All right, so it is a work in progress, but it is a lot better. The very bottom didn't get as burned as I expected it to be, but there are some brown pieces on top. I did cover it with foil for a period of time, and I had to adjust the temperature several times. So like, I think I had it for 300 degrees and down to 250, then up to 275. So my oven is really not regulated right now. Besides little burnt pieces, it's perfectly done. I am gonna bring this to work and serve it to my coworkers, and I hope they really like it. Good morning and happy Thanksgiving. Today's Thursday and it's about 7:30 in the morning, and we're going to continue this video starting up with the pumpkin lasagna roll-ups. So I'm just going to say excuse me for the gap because I tried to get this video up and posted before Thanksgiving, but life happens. And so today I'm going to continue on with my menu plan. For this recipe, we're going to need kosher salt, lasagna noodles, salted butter, flour, whole milk, black pepper, grated Parmesan, nutmeg, cayenne pepper, pumpkin puree, whole milk ricotta cheese, shredded mozzarella cheese, 1 large egg, and 2 teaspoons of fresh sage or more for topping. Just to let you guys know, I did not abandon my order of operations. I still have it on my refrigerator, and I'm going to continue to follow it just to make sure everything is done. just add a little bit more pumpkin puree and a little bit more Parmesan cheese. So if you feel like it's lacking something, it's a Parmesan cheese, so just add more of that. Now we're just going to loosely cover this with foil, put it into the oven for 15 minutes, and then we're going to uncover it and bake until bubbly for about 10 more minutes. And then the recipe says to let it sit for 15 minutes before serving. Just quickly cover. Okay, there it is. Half the middle. I think this pan was like 10 by 14 or 11 by 15. I think it was 11 by 15. And it worked out great because everything fits in here. Okay, we're gonna bake it. Go ahead and put it out the pan. Thank you. All right, so the lasagna roll-ups are ready in the oven, but I missed a step on my orders of operation. I know we had some interruption while making our recipes, so looking back at it, number 4 was missed. So we're supposed to make the holiday apple cider in a crock pot. So instead of starting off with the pumpkin soup, like it says here on my orders of operation, we're gonna go ahead and start with the cider. And that way it can kind of marinate together. It's just about 9:30, so we still have plenty of time to make the remaining recipes. I did make the galettes earlier for work, earlier in this video, but we're gonna make the galettes again. I actually had 2 doughs. The dough that I made for my party and the dough that I made during the filming is still in my freezer. I hope you guys are enjoying your Thanksgiving today. And we're just taking a little break. We're gonna watch a Macy's parade and then we're gonna get back to our cooking. All right, so I have all the ingredients that I need to make the holiday apple cider. I have the apple juice, we have cinnamon stick, whole cloves. We need allspice that it's grounded, but we have a little grinder right here that we're gonna use to grind that allspice. We also have fresh cranberries, Fuji apple, orange, and a Granny Smith apple. One big change we're gonna do to this recipe is that instead of boiling everything in a pot for about an hour and straining it, we're just gonna dump everything into the crock pot. And this is a 4.5 quart crock pot, so everything just gets dumped in here. It's just gonna marinate together, and then just before we leave, I can slice up a little bit more apples and put some more cranberries just for the topping, and then it's ready to serve. This little electric grinder I had for 2 years now, and I was supposed to grind coffee with it, but instead I bought this like handheld like stone grinder for coffee. So I don't really use this often, but it's perfect to like grind your own spices. So anyway, that's what we're gonna do for this recipe. I have the whole spice, and this is whole spice. And we need a teaspoon of ground whole spice. So I'm just gonna add a bunch in here. That should make about a teaspoon. And then just pulse it. Oh wow, it's very fragrant. I think I'm gonna do it a little bit more because it's not like pulverized enough. All right, I think that looks good. So we don't have to strain this recipe. Everything will just settle to the bottom and people can just scoop out their juice. Next, we're gonna slice up our fruit, and since it's gonna be sitting in the crock pot for a while, I want the fruit to be nice and thick. And then later on when we garnish it, we can just cut thin slices of fruit. So it's just gonna be one of each. All right, so I have my 4.5 quart crock pot on my table. You can set this on a counter and assemble it there, but for aesthetics, I have everything on my table. So we're gonna add all the solids to our crock pot, and then we're gonna add the liquid. So let's start by adding our fruits that we just cut up. We're also gonna be adding 1 cup of cranberries. So I'm just gonna add half of this. You can rinse this out before putting it in here. We're gonna add our spices. We're gonna use that freshly ground allspice, and we just need a teaspoon. So we have all this left over, and just sprinkle that on top. We also need 2 cinnamon sticks. And we're just gonna need 4 whole cloves. I need 1 more. There we go. And then the recipe calls for 10 cups of apple juice. Now 4 cups is 1 quart, and I'm gonna have a little bit more in here, so I'm just gonna use the whole entire 2 quarts of apple juice. That's perfect. Now all we have to do is just basically put it on low, let it simmer, let it come together. I'm not even gonna look at it. And then towards the end, when we're about to serve or before we leave, I can just add some more fresh fruit on top for color. We're finally moving along on our Thanksgiving menu plan, and our number 6 is our creamy pumpkin soup recipe. This is from wholesomeyum.com, and we need olive oil, onion, garlic, chicken broth, full fat coconut milk, pumpkin puree, which we have more of, nutmeg, sea salt, and black pepper. It does need a Dutch oven, and it says over medium heat, but we're just gonna saute it on our stovetop, and then we're gonna dump everything in a crock pot. And then I have a hand blender, and we're gonna blend everything up per recipe. All this should take about 30 minutes, and you can adjust the recipe online. So if you're serving more people, you can actually bring this cursor up and it will give you the adjusted recipe. We're gonna add our onions. And we're gonna cook that for about 5 to 7 minutes until it becomes translucent. Okay, so I did cut up the rest of the onion, and I'm gonna make this as a double recipe because what am I gonna do with half a cup of pumpkin anyway? So I cut up the whole onion. I chopped up more, or minced up more garlic. And we're gonna let this cook for about 1 to 2 more minutes. All right, so time to use the crock pot. We're going to add in our onion and garlic that we just made. We're gonna add our chicken broth, and double recipe is gonna need 8 cups. I'm gonna add 2 teaspoons of bouillon, and if we need more, I'll add more. We're gonna add 2 cans of full fat coconut milk. This is the coconut milk that I bought in Costco, and it's not bad. It does have a lot of fat in it. I normally buy mine in the Asian grocery store. We're gonna add the whole entire 29 ounces of pumpkin, and I have a little bit more left over from another can, so we're gonna add that too. It's very full. I might have to take some of it out because for transport, because this is gonna end up spilling. I have just a little bit left over here, so I'm gonna add that too. I'm really maximizing this crock pot. Okay, wow. This is very full. We're gonna add a teaspoonful of sea salt. So that's half a teaspoon and another half. We need black pepper. I got this grinder from Trader Joe's, but it takes so long. Okay. And then we're gonna add 1 teaspoon of nutmeg. One full recipe needs half a teaspoon. We're gonna just mix all of this up. Actually, you know what? I have my immersion blender that we're just about to use, and hopefully this doesn't spill over. All right, so if you don't have a hand blender, you can use a regular blender. It creates a suction, so I have to like use 2 hands to kind of bring it up. Okay, so I did adjust the seasonings a little bit. I added a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. I added 2 more teaspoons of bouillon. And then I took some of the soup and I poured it into the same pan that we sauteed the onion and garlic just to get the extra flavor in it. And then I did put a little bit more black peppers. One very important thing to this recipe, make sure you use a full-bodied coconut milk. And I mean a coconut milk that has lots of flavor and lots of fat, because the one that I used from Costco, and it doesn't look, or it doesn't taste as rich. Now, it does look fatty, but the flavor wasn't there. So I think that's why it's lacking in flavor. Also, I don't really have a lot of time. I'm gonna put this into the stovetop and I'm gonna let it cook. I have about 40 minutes left before we leave. So I'm gonna put it into the stove, cook it down for about 20 minutes, and then transfer it back into the crock pot. Now, if you guys need a full-bodied coconut milk, I do recommend Cheoco. That's something I use from my Asian grocery store. You can also find it online. I will link that to the description below. Our very last thing on our order of operation is number 7, and that's to make the galettes and bake it. So I know early in the video we made that already, but I was in such a rush that it really didn't come out great, and my oven up here on my first floor is really not working that well. So this time I'm gonna use my mom's oven in the basement, and then this time I'm also making plums and peaches. I still have the plums that we cut up early in this video. We put a little sugar into it and we refrigerated it, so it's still good, and that's what we're gonna use today. To this bowl, I have 3 tablespoons of sugar and 2 lemon zest. When I made this the first time, I feel like 1 tablespoon or even 2 tablespoons of sugar is not enough. I know peaches are sweet, but when you put them together into the galettes, it just wasn't enough flavor. So that's why I have 3 tablespoons this time. You can add or take away, it's up to your taste. Anyway, I have about 2 15-ounce cans of peaches. These are sliced. I did slice them up myself because I only had half peaches. I rinsed them and then I have them drying here on the paper towel. So we're gonna put that in here. The recipe also calls for 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, but we're just gonna put 1. I have tried 1 before and it works out just fine. And then we're gonna mix that together. You'll notice that there's gonna be liquid on the bottom of this bowl. So when you put your peaches into your dough, don't get the liquid. Okay. I have another helper this time. So, Serena, we're gonna just flour our surface, okay? And we're also going to flour our rolling pin. Okay, you can also flour your hands if you want. Here is our chilled dough. I did have this in the refrigerator, no, in the freezer, sorry, for about at least 24 hours. The recipe calls for to be chilled for 2 hours, so you can still see the chunks of butter in there. All right, Serena, you want to roll that out? You want to roll this enough where you're going to get a total of 6 to 10 galettes. I'm hoping for 10. Make sure the dough is defrosted enough to roll. You also want a similar thickness in the entire dough. It does take several tries to figure out the thickness that works for you. If a recipe calls for a specific thickness, you can use a spacer band or a dough ring to get the right thickness. To get a visual, you can also take 2 quarters and stack them up on top of each other and put it next to the dough to get an 8-inch thickness. I have a large 4.5-inch cookie cutter that I use to get 6 skillets with the first roll and then 2 additional with the dough scraps. It's important not to mix or knead the dough where you don't see any more chunks of butter. You can also pop the cut dough into the freezer for a few minutes before shaping the fruit. So we have 8 galettes, not bad. If you make them too thin, what I've done in the past, or just recent past, is I took 2 of them together and I layered it, and it made it really puffy. So we're gonna just stretch this out just a little bit. And these are gonna be nice and small. You wanna do yours? We're gonna take some fruit. Oh, you know what? I don't think we put any cornstarch in this yet. This is the plums that we cut a few days ago. You can see there's some liquid in here, so don't grab the liquid. Try to just get the ones on top, and then eventually when you reach to the bottom, just kind of pour the liquid out. We're gonna take about 2 pieces. I find that 3 is too much, and we're just gonna fold. That's really cute. That is so much better than the one that I showed you earlier in the video. And we're gonna chill this a little bit before we bake it. Let me show you another one. I'm gonna fold. Okay. And we're gonna put this on a plate so we can chill it in the freezer. Before baking, brush the dough with cream or egg wash, then sprinkle cane sugar on top. The original recipe calls for coarse sugar, but I don't like to bite into a hard piece of sugar, and the cane sugar works well. Then you bake at 350 degrees for about 35 to 45 minutes or until golden brown. Alright guys, so this is how all the food came out. We have the pesto and spinach stuffed butternut squash. And I did put some more fontina cheese on top. We're going to bake that. We have our galettes that took a long time to bake in my mom's basement because we have a problem with our oven. But it looks really delicious and I think I can nail it this time. This looks much better than the other ones. Then we have our pumpkin lasagna roll-ups. You can't really see the roll-ups because all the cheese is on top. And then we're gonna bake this again so all the cheese melts and it looks delicious. We have our apple spiced cider. I did add a little bit more of orange slices, cranberries. I did put a star anise in the middle. I put some cardamom powder and also some cinnamon, some ground cinnamon. I'm gonna also mix it with some ginger ale and some seltzer water when we serve this. And then our pumpkin soup with coconut milk. I did have to add a teaspoon of Chinese 5-spice. I added a little bit more salt. I also added another 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. And then I put some thyme for decoration. So you can add more spices, but I think the Chinese 5-spice really added the perfect flavor to this. And I added about 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. I have some leftover soup, not all of it fit in here, but if you add those extra spices and the cornstarch, it makes a soup absolutely perfect. Go ahead and serve this with some warm, fresh bread. All right, everyone, thank you for watching this very long Thanksgiving Cook With Me video of 2023. I know it took a few days to make. We did have a few interruptions, life interruptions, and so that's why I wasn't able to cook everything one day, but it did help with order of operations and help me get organized. I really put my heart and soul into this video, and I really tried to get a meal plan going. And I'm not really the one to make a meal plan. I'm kind of the one who just cooks from whatever I have in my fridge or my freezer. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed my meal plan that I selected for 2023. I'm sure if you try it at home, it'll be delicious as well. But anyway, thanks for watching. I am going to make another set of food for this Saturday for Friendsgiving. Basically the same thing, including the pot roast. So I'm going to take a picture and I'll post that on my community post. Here's the Thanksgiving spread we had with my brother on Thanksgiving Day. He made the best deep fried turkey with full of flavor, crispy skin, and a very moist turkey breast. Check out the video where my sister-in-law and I sliced the delicious turkey. There is a brief explanation to the recipe marked on the description. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed watching this video. Thank you. See you guys next time. Bye.